Imagine tapping the Safari icon on your iPhone. A familiar search bar appears. For most of us, that's the beginning of a quick query, a simple act of finding information. But behind that seemingly innocuous default lies one of the most astonishing financial arrangements in corporate history. In 2022 alone, Google paid a single company an estimated $20 billion. This was not for a massive acquisition, or a game-changing patent portfolio, or even a sprawling advertising campaign. It was for something far simpler and, in its own way, far more valuable: the privilege of being the default search engine on a competitor's devices. That company was Apple. $20 billion. To put that in perspective, it's more than the entire gross domestic product of countries like Iceland or Afghanistan. It's more than the annual revenue of giants like Delta Airlines or Marriott International, and it landed squarely in Apple's bank account, largely as pure profit, for simply allowing Google to be the pre-selected option when you open Safari on your iPhone. This astonishing payment, revealed in court documents during the Department of Justice's antitrust trial against Google, is a stark demonstration of corporate power, the value of user inertia, and the eye-watering cost of maintaining a monopoly. I dug through the numbers, the court filings, and the corporate maneuvers so you don't have to, and it all comes down to three fundamental truths about how we use the internet, how companies fight for our attention, and the brutal calculus of market dominance. The first truth is that default settings are digital concrete. Consider your own behavior. How many times have you actively changed the default search engine on your smartphone or web browser? For most Americans, the answer is zero. You might tweak your wallpaper, change your ringtone, or even delete pre-installed apps, but when it comes to the engine powering your daily queries, the vast majority of users simply stick with what's given to them. Data from the DOJ trial against Google highlighted this precise point. The default option captures between 90 to 95% of all search queries on any given device. Think about that for a moment. It means that whether you are searching for a restaurant, a movie time, or simply the answer to a burning question, if Google is the default, you are almost certainly using Google. It is a nearly unbreakable habit, a cognitive shortcut we all take. And Google understands this inertia perfectly. This isn't a new phenomenon. Microsoft famously leveraged its Windows operating system to make Internet Explorer the default browser in the 1990s, effectively sidelining Netscape Navigator. That battle eventually led to one of the most significant antitrust cases in US history. Google, it turns out, learned that lesson. Instead of building their own operating system to push Chrome and Google Search, they simply pay the gatekeepers of other popular operating systems. Apple, with its iOS, is the most crucial gatekeeper of all. More than 1 billion iPhones are in active use globally, each one a potential access point for Google's multi-trillion-dollar search empire. For Google, ensuring those users default to their search engine is not just an advantage, it is an existential necessity. The alternative would be giving up billions of daily queries to a competitor, a move that would slowly but surely erode their market share and, eventually, their entire business model. The second truth is that this payment is an absolute goldmine for Apple. When Google hands over those billions, it is almost entirely pure profit for Apple. There are no factories to build, no raw materials to source, no complex supply chains to manage. Apple is simply licensing access to its user base. For a company that typically earns its revenue from selling high-margin hardware like iPhones, Macs, and iPads, this service's income is remarkably efficient. In its fiscal year 2023, Apple's services division, which includes things like the App Store, Apple Music, iCloud, and this Google payment, brought in over $85 billion. The $20 billion from Google alone represents a significant portion of that services revenue, bolstering Apple's financial results and pleasing shareholders who are always looking for new, recurring income streams beyond device sales. This deal is so lucrative, so strategically important that Apple's executives have repeatedly called it foundational to their services business. It's a masterclass in extracting value from a rival. Apple doesn't need to compete in search itself, they simply need to control access to their enormous user base. They hold the keys to a vast kingdom of high-value consumers. Google wants those consumers. Apple makes them pay handsomely for the privilege. It's a classic example of what economists call rent-seeking, where a company profits not by producing goods or services more efficiently, but by controlling access to a critical resource. In this case, the resource is the attention of iPhone users, and Apple ruthlessly holds Google over a barrel. This brings us to the third truth. The US government views this arrangement as illegal monopolization. In 2020, The Department of Justice, along with several state attorneys general, filed a landmark antitrust lawsuit against Google, alleging that the company illegally maintained a monopoly in the search market. The Apple deal became a central piece of evidence in that case. The government argued that Google used these massive payments to lock up the default search positions on key platforms, effectively starving rivals like Microsoft's Bing or DuckDuckGo of the scale they needed to compete. Without access to a significant user base, these smaller search engines couldn't collect enough data to improve their algorithms, making it impossible to challenge Google's dominance. It was a vicious cycle, the DOJ claimed, deliberately engineered by Google to cement its near-total control over how we find information online. The trial itself was a fascinating peek behind the corporate curtain, with executives from both Google and Apple testifying about the strategic importance and the financial details of their arrangement. Lawyers for the government painted a picture of Google as a company so powerful and so entrenched that it could simply buy its way out of competition. Google, for its part, argued that users could always change their default search engine with a few taps. If Apple chose to sell premium placement, that was Apple's decision, and Google was simply competing fairly to provide the best product. But the jury wasn't convinced by this argument. In September of 2023, a federal court found that Google had indeed illegally maintained a monopoly in the search market. This was a monumental victory for the government, confirming its suspicions that Google's dominance wasn't just a result of a superior product, but also of anti-competitive tactics. Now, the legal battle moves into what's known as the remedy phase in 2024. This is where the court decides what Google must do to fix the damage caused by its monopolistic behavior. The options range from fines to structural changes, but one of the most significant potential remedies is a ban on these exclusive default search engine deals. Imagine a world where Apple could no longer accept $20 billion from Google. The financial implications for Apple would be staggering. Losing a $20 billion stream of high-margin revenue would force the company to rethink its services strategy entirely. It would almost certainly impact their earnings, their stock price, and their ability to fund other ambitious projects like their push into virtual reality. Executives who got used to that gravy train would be forced to scramble for alternatives. For Google, the implications are equally profound, if not more so. If they couldn't pay to be the default, they would suddenly face a far more level playing field. Microsoft, with its deep pockets and improved Bing search engine, would likely jump at the opportunity to bid for default status on iPhones. Other search engines could gain a foothold. Google would have to rely entirely on the perceived quality of its search results to attract and retain users, rather than simply buying access to them. This is the moment where Google's executives, who have for years written massive checks to avoid real competition, would have to prove that their product is truly better, not just better funded. The risk of losing market share, even a few percentage points, would be immense, directly impacting their core advertising business, which still generates the vast majority of their profits. This entire saga highlights the brutal nature of competition in the digital age. Google, despite its apparent dominance, lives in constant fear of losing its user base. The moment users stop searching on Google, the entire advertising edifice collapses. Apple, meanwhile, is a company that understands the immense power of its ecosystem. It meticulously controls every aspect of the user experience, and it has no qualms about leveraging that control to extract maximum value from anyone who wants access. The $20 billion payment isn't a sign of partnership, it's a testament to a fierce, strategic struggle for control over the digital economy, a struggle where the stakes are astronomical and the weapons are cold, hard cash. The future of this arrangement, and the fate of billions in revenue for both companies, now rests in the hands of the courts. Whether this titanic payment continues, or if the government finally breaks the hold of the default, one thing is clear: the most lucrative deal in corporate history revealed just how much companies are willing to pay to control the smallest, most overlooked corner of our digital lives. This enormous payment isn't just a transfer of wealth between two tech giants, it's an invisible tax on the digital economy, ultimately borne by every business that relies on online advertising and, by extension, their customers. Google's dominance in search means it controls the gateway to billions of potential customers. Advertisers, from a small local bakery in Kansas City to a multinational retailer like Walmart, have little choice but to bid on Google's ad platform to reach these users. In 2023, Google generated over $237 billion in advertising revenue globally. The $20 billion paid to Apple represents a significant percentage of that colossal sum, a cost Google is willing to incur because its monopoly position allows it to command premium prices for its ad slots. This mechanism means that the price of nearly every product or service you see advertised online, whether it's a new smartphone or a streaming subscription, indirectly factors in Google's cost of maintaining its search dominance. It stifles innovation not just in search, but across the entire ad tech ecosystem, making it harder for competitors to offer cheaper, more transparent advertising options. This perpetuates a cycle where businesses pay more and consumers ultimately face fewer choices and potentially higher prices, all to keep Google as the internet's primary gatekeeper. Subscribe to Margin, and the next video is waiting for you on screen right now.